I like those. I like those questions that are helpful. Hello, hello.
Check.
Right.
Check 1, 2.
Check.
Ladies and gentlemen, and we're back. The current score is Caleb 2, Jeremy 1.
No, keep going.
Oh, okay. Is that the way you want to start?
I don't know, maybe.
Today, here at the Upside Down People, we're talking about Upside Down People podcast.
That's it.
UPP.
UDP.
UDP.
UDP podcast. Upside is one word down. I know it gets me every time.
Yep. UDPP.
UDPP. UDPP. All right. Well, welcome.
Did your voice break?
It did. Welcome back. Oh, brilliant. Welcome back to another episode of the Upside Down People podcast. I'm joined here with Jeremy Bourdon.
I'm back, baby.
Hello. And yeah, I've been enjoying the conversations we've been having. I think it leaves space in the room just to have a chat as some friends about some things that we find interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And hopefully other people find it interesting.
Yeah, if you do, please let us know. Also, if there's something that you wanting us to chat about or want to sort of pick our thoughts on, let us know as well.
Yeah, I can say without a shadow of doubt, I'm probably not right on those things that they want us to talk about.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to talk about them.
We can talk about them. I'm sort of like in mixed minds as well with just giving an opinion for opinion's sake.
Yeah.
And also aware that a podcasting platform, which I don't agree with because it's, in terms of our one, it's conversational, but people seem to add a level of authority to it, which can be very dangerous as well.
But at the end of the day, we are just two humans,
right,
who are trying to follow Christ.
Exactly.
Just like our podcast listeners are.
Yeah.
There's no hierarchy in this relationship.
No, not at all. We're going through probably very similar challenges, similar joys.
Yeah.
Experienced similar struggles. So yeah, just talking that through. I suppose our point of difference to other things is like we're really motivated to see how the gospel shapes things and seeing that through.
And how it shapes our world even, you know?
Yeah.
And what does that look like even for our culture and how culture's changing and shifting constantly, you know?
Yeah.
I grew up in the States, so culture's very Christian over there. And then moving to Australia was like, oh, I'm not in a Christian culture anymore.
It's very secular. Yeah. Exactly. And that's a huge culture shock in itself as well. They're not playing Jeremy Camp in the shopping malls or Michael W. Smith or Toby Mac.
No, you're not hearing that regularly.
Exactly. One thing, quite a while back, I had a conversation with, who was it? It could have been John Dixon, and something he said is, yeah, I could be wrong. But anyway, the gospel is not owned by one single culture.
No.
And I think that's something that's beautiful in understanding that we living in Australia, you living or coming from America, wherever you find yourself in the world, that culture does not own the gospel.
No, and for me, there was a lot of breaking things down even when I moved here because I'd go to church and I'm like, oh, this looks different than my tradition. There's probably a lot of what's happened in the U.S. that's been brought over and stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm like, I needed to question what's American Christian culture and what's biblical, you know? Like,
and even it sort of impacts how you respond to things as well, right? It's
like, for sure.
Is this relational issue that you're having with a friend, are you looking at that through an American gospel lens, like you've placed these expectations on the friendship, or you're looking at it through an Australian cultural context?
Oh, even things like language and like different language that maybe the U.S. would consider more of a curse, and here they probably wouldn't. Language is probably a little bit looser. Things like drinking, whether or not Christians can have a drink or not, whether that's sinful. That's like big American culture, you know?
It's crazy to think that it would be sinful to have a drink. I know I don't feel like it's controversial territory personally, because it's like it's in the Bible. Yeah. Like, why would Jesus' first miracle be turning water into wine if it's a sinful thing? Why would he lead people into sin?
Yeah.
Which I strongly disagree that he would lead people into sin.
I would agree with your agreement.
But yeah, so cultures, they have a beautiful way of seeing the gospel and highlighting certain aspects of it and of God's character, but they don't own the sole distribution rights to how that should look. And I think that's why we need diversity in the church, and that's something that God's the way He's created it, thankfully, as well.
Yeah, and I think there's beauty in diversity. You know, I think it's that mosaic of who Jesus is and who God is by seeing all the different coming together. I work for Churches of Christ here in Western Australia, and one of our values is unity in diversity, you know? Awesome. That we want to be unified on the things that are essential, but we don't need to be unified on everything, you know? Yeah. Because we are diverse and we do have different feelings towards different things, you know, that aren't necessarily the essential gospel.
Yeah.
But where we can have unity, we want that.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite quotes, and I can't quote it directly, but I can paraphrase it, is from C.S. Lewis when he talks about, in his book, The Four Lives, he talks about friendship. And he talks about the death of a friend. When a friend dies, you're not only losing that friend, but you losing parts of each of your friends that had connection with them, including yourself. And in the same way, the life of each friend, when they come together, bring out things in you that no one else can bring out. So I look at that and I'm like, well, Jesus calls us his friends.
Yeah.
And when we are together, we see different aspects of Jesus' beauty, and we're able to bring attention to each other, to those different aspects, which we may not see if it was just ourselves looking at Jesus.
100%.
So I like that. Unity, diversity and unity.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
100%.
So,
I was going to ask you, so what are you seeing as a trend, or maybe in faith and culture at the moment, that I guess you asked me the questions most of the time, so I'm flipping it on you, so maybe you're not prepared for this.
I just find it easier. I like finding out what other people are thinking, and
yeah, but I'm going to make you go first. I know you think through a lot of faith in culture and what things look like pretty regularly, so yeah, what are you seeing, or what experiences have you had recently
with regards to
kind of I'm throwing it general, so you can take it wherever you want, but just this idea of Christianity in the current cultural climate of today.
Yeah, I think you have to first define what the current cultural climate is.
Yeah.
And that obviously, I think...
Are we going to use Australia as our...
Well, I was going to say, we're in Australia, so we can definitely use Australia. I'm looking at it through a South African-Australian lens.
Okay.
And you're looking at it through an Australian-American lens. American-Australian...
American-South African-Australian lens.
Yeah, so many different lenses going on. But Yeah, I think it's important to define that like when I'm making observations, like I'm making it based on my culture here in Australia.
And your presuppositions and a lot of things going on in the mind. Yeah.
Exactly.
We take all those disclaimers and we will let you have those.
But there are lots of similarities in terms of the Western cultures, and something that I think lots of people will understand and be able to see is the rise of individuality. And I think what I have noticed is in churches particularly is there's been a demonization of individuality, which I think is wrong. So I think Western culture's individuality isn't right either. But when we demonize it, it's wrong because, like, you look in Scripture and we are, like, known by God. Each are known by name. We've been created uniquely. He's placed gifts inside us. He calls us his workmanship. So there's a uniqueness to the way we've been crafted. But I think when that becomes the central focus, that's when it's wrong in both ways. So it's like either I think the culture sort of lifts up the individual. The Australian culture lifts up the individual and says, like, you do you, live your best life, follow your dream. It's all about you. If that's upsetting, then like go find different friends or go do something else. Which that isn't helpful because that just, the end of that is despair. And in the same way, if you demonize the individual, then essentially you going against, you end up at a point of saying, okay, well, like how you contending with these scriptures of like we're made in God's image. No single person, like what we were saying before, no single person is God or looks like God. So we're all collectively are showing different attributes of him, but we have gifts and abilities and skills, and we look different, we speak different, all these different cultures. So there is like you have to acknowledge there's a unique individuality that's God-given.
Yeah, and I think we're talking very specifically about Western culture here.
Right.
And it's a both and, right? And that's the thing that I think as you grow, we've talked about this before, as you grow and mature as a Christian, something that you need to learn is how to hold tension. So it needs to be a both and.
Yeah.
It needs to be the individual, but it needs to be the community too. And we are a Western culture, so we don't understand community like others understand community, where like I don't even, when I studied missions in school, like to see a whole village make a singular decision to become Christians, like that doesn't make sense in my mind, because it's like you didn't make the decision yourself. This head of the village made the decision and you all followed suit, and we're praising and like happy about it. Yeah. But that doesn't work in my Western mind. But I do understand it's a both and, you know, like, and probably that community aspect more and more. I'm realizing the value of that.
Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, what do you notice the value of community is within our context?
Well, so I've done a lot of jobs. I've probably brought up a lot of different jobs I've done over these podcasts. But when I was a youth pastor, one of the things I saw was not a lot, but parents would come up to me and go, hey, my kid's not really gelling with youth. There's something going on. Like, they don't want to be here. And my first response always was, what friends do they have in the church?
Right.
Like, how are you fostering those friendships and those relationships in that community? And oftentimes they weren't. That's why it was happening. But I've just seen over and over again that the people that in my life at least that have stayed really strong in their faith and have actually grown, it's been in relationship with others. I will put a caveat out on that. There's a sect that I've seen that have done really well, and I'm going to call these people and this is not a perfect system, but they are probably the ones that aren't the most popular in their friend group.
Okay.
They're kind of the bring along or the last member almost.
Right.
And the reason why they've been so strong in their in their faith is because they've never been the decision maker and they've never been the popular one, and they're never the ones that are influencing others. So they've always had to make decisions for themselves anyways.
Right.
So when their friends decide, oh, we're not going to follow anymore, or we're going to go off and do this, they actually are more secure than those that looked really secure from the front, and because they're the most popular, they're actually way more secure in themselves and who they are, even though they're the uncool or
Right.
not the ones that fit in or whatever. They're actually the strongest out of them.
Yeah.
So I think for me, kind of seeing over the years just the amount of community that it's taken, even for my faith, like some of my friends through high school and really those formative years of university is really why I'm where I'm at now. And
Right.
that's continued on in my relationships and in my marriage and in my family. And,
Yeah.
it is both and. It's my individual faith, but I've had to do it in community to really sharpen myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. John Tyson, who's an American pastor, I think he's actually from Australia originally, but he wrote a book on fatherhood, and basically in it he unpacks a bit of research that there's this like epidemic of an identity crisis for young men and young women as well, but his focus was on boys becoming like a man, and there's an identity crisis in what does it look like, what's my identity, what's my role, what's my place in society. And curiously, he found in community-centric cultures like tribes in Africa, or there's this strong sense of identity. And basically his research that he draws from is there's like a clear pathway. His book's called The Primal Path. There's a clear pathway for a child to enter into what it looks like to be a responsible adult in their village, to contribute. So that pathway is very clear, and sometimes they may have to become a man, they may have to go out and kill a lion. But when they do, they're accepted back in the community and treated as such. Whereas over here in our culture, we put this emphasis on the individual to go out and find who you are. And that's something I think we can't do alone. We've been created by God to be in. We've been created by a relational God who's the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, put in community because it's not good to be alone. And that's something that differs, is we struggle with identity because there's no, like, the onus is on ourselves to try to figure out for ourselves where we belong. And like what you're saying is community helps with that. That's 100%. Why we need community.
I'm just picturing like a 16-year-old Jeremy trying to kill a lion, and I don't know how that happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can imagine this. I've seen those hands.
Oh, yeah, these hands are not for fighting.
What's, looking back at a 16-year-old Jeremy, what's something that you'd want to share with yourself, knowing, like, just thinking about that identity? I don't know if you've ever struggled with identity, or if it's something you've always been confident in. But what's something that you would sort of reassure or encourage your 16-year-old self in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, I've struggled with identity. I've struggled with trying to find my spot. I went through lots of phases of trials and different things like that. So I was like, I did like Christian rap music when I grew up from like.
Is it on Spotify? Just do a quick plug.
If it is on Spotify, it's probably like top 10, you know? No, it definitely isn't Spotify. I think our first CD I put out was like when I was 12. It was before my voice broke, you know? And but I look back at that kid and like I dressed really like rappers would. I had chains. I had, you know, I would wear a do-rag. I had jerseys on. But I also had a confidence that I probably would be so scared to have now. And there's almost a beautifulness in that. Like
purity in it.
Yeah, where like we'd go to the projects and I would rap on basketball courts, you know, like, and then like work with a local group to give backpacks away and school supplies, you know,
right,
and stuff like that. And I'm like, I would be so scared to do that now. So in some ways, when I look back at my 13 or 16-year-old self, I was like, oh, was that kid braver because of that purity and that openness?
Or maybe the question should be then, what would you want your 16-year-old self to tell Jeremy now?
Yeah, that's probably a better question. So I think if I could tell my 16-year-old self something, honestly, I don't think I would change anything. It would be more like things aren't going to go the way you thought they're going to go, but it's going to be fine in the end, right, kind of thing. Just like a reassurance in that perspective. What I would tell my 34-year-old self, I'm getting this in before my 35th birthday, you know, would probably be the inverse and go, don't take things too seriously, you know?
Cool.
And almost have that, like, sometimes you can lose your joy in life.
Awesome.
By being weighed down by bills and this and that, where it's like, oh, you actually have it pretty sweet, you know? Like, if my 16-year-old self could see myself now, they would be like, you've gotten kind of everything you've wanted, and you need to remember that, you know? So,
that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's just made my day thinking about that.
There you go. Yeah. I think it's like not taking things too seriously is so important because we are weighed down by adult responsibilities like looking after a spouse, looking after children, bills, like it all, you start sort of getting stuck into it all, and it can like get you down.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, I'm not to the extreme where I think you go one way and you go, I'm not going to do anything and the Lord's going to provide for me, you know? Like,
no, I'm not hearing that at all. I'm just hearing like, you know what? Seasons come and go.
100%.
And I think we have this hope inside of us. So let's like hold on to that instead of holding on and trying to figure out exactly the nuances of the current circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to be brave, you know? Like, in some ways I do want that.
Yeah.
I think I may have talked about this. Did I talk about Boaz on Easter?
No.
Am I? Okay, great.
What did he do?
Well, we did like this thing in the lead up to Easter where we talked and did something every day, and we did a different activity and stuff for 12 days. You know how people do the resurrection eggs? We kind of like did that where we did it 12 days, but we did our own thing.
Yeah.
And like day 4, we went and did like Palm Sunday, went out and got palms and stuff, and like from like somewhere in the neighborhood and stuff. And we talked about Jesus' triumphal entry, and Boaz is just walking down the street, waving his palm, going, Hosanna in the highest.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it's beautiful. But then I'm also like, oh, there's something about this that I can't partake, you know? Like,
yeah.
There's almost like my adultness, you know? It's like, oh, are people going to think we're weird? And it's just like the beauty of a child to like have that freedom and that purity.
Yeah. They don't know what weird is.
Yeah.
There's no definition of that's weird. It's just that person does that.
And I just want to be a bit more weird again.
Yeah.
And be okay with it.
So on that, I reckon that is a cultural thing. I think it's very hard.
It is a cultural thing, 100%.
Yeah.
It because it's what I have seen in culture and what I am expecting how other people would react and how I would react in that situation.
Perth, where we're currently based, Perth is a very unique culture in the sense of it's very critical, yet it's not openly critical. So it's like what you're saying is you'll hear other people's responses or reactions. They don't always like outwardly say that to you. But it's a very hard, I think, in terms of like, it's a very hostile culture towards being weird and Christianity.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, I almost think it's Christianity is a little bit of a strange one because I think we have moved into a culture here in Australia, or especially in WA, where everyone can have their own spirituality, and that's all right.
Right.
As long as it's not Christian.
As long as you're not sharing about it.
Yeah. I think if you're platforming it, then sometimes it's not as respected. But we've seen that in studies anyways, that Australians don't respect the celebrity Christian, you know? Like, America loves, if someone puts Jesus in a song, it's like, this person's a Christian now, you know? Like, kind of thing. And they love to put people on pedestals. Or just like, they love that celebrity to say, yep, they're one of us, they're with us. Where here, it's actually a deterrent for a lot of people, like to pedestal, to go, oh, this celebrity Christian.
Right. But even so, Christianity aside, I've heard it say when Simon Sinek came to Perth a couple years back, when he did his talk afterwards, he said it's the hardest audience that he's had to talk to or speak to anywhere in the world. And then a friend was telling me recently they had a comedian that came over and similar sort of comment. The comedian was like, I just could not read the crowd. The crowd just gave nothing.
Well, that's, at least we're known for something.
I don't know if that's what you want to... I don't know if that's the culture that you want to cultivate when you're trying to create a sense of identity and community and individuality. Like, try and hold those things in tension.
Coldplay came just to Perth when they came to Australia, so... I don't know if that's saying anything.
Is that because last time they didn't come to Perth?
It might be that. It might be because they were coming from the UK and it's the first spot in Australia, and then they can get out of here.
They can get out of here. Yeah. Well, they're one of the unique bands because not many bands pop over.
No, it's true. It's true. Yeah, we are probably very critical.
Yeah. But it's like it's not the public criticism that I'm thinking of. It's sort of I'm not going to tell you what I'm thinking. So
yeah,
I'm not going to tell you if you're doing good, and I'm not going to tell you if you're doing bad. It's a very standoffish. That's the vibe I get.
Yeah, it's
Cold.
it's standoffish, and mateship's a real thing, where like people are friends with you,
Right.
but it's really hard to talk about faith. It's like if you have a mate, they will come over and they'll build a wall with you. You know, they'll put limestone down. They'll do demos. They'll do the hard work.
Right.
But to like have a conversation about like some real stuff can often be a challenge.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
There's probably some cultural stuff in it, like from the way they were raised and society in general.
Yeah.
Australia, convict colony, you know, so there is a lot of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you know, and the gospel is quite humbling, you know, and you need a level of humility in it and to sit under. So, yeah, I think there's some of it that's cultural.
Yeah. Because
but then I also think some of it might just be they've never seen it, you know?
right, exampled or
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I know like statistics show that men struggle with that particularly in terms of opening up.
Yeah.
I feel like faith is one of those parts. So talk about Australian secular culture, you keep your faith private. So then that's like another layer added to that. So when you're catching up with mates, to open up is one thing, to open up about faith is another thing, or various struggles. Because, yeah, statistics show that men have the highest suicide rates in Australia. I think last year or the year before, it was the leading cause of death for men between the ages of 19 and 45.
Yeah.
The conversation I was having with two different guys on the podcast, Mark Hayes quite a while ago, and another guy, Wayne Alcorn, as well. Both talked about the importance of men creating spaces for each other to share.
Yeah.
Which is so important.
And one of the things that I've found beneficial in kind of my dealings in this space is around making offers.
Right.
And I think if you can master making offers, then you treat people as human and you treat people as how Jesus wants to see them. Sometimes I think when you're creating spaces or wanting to tell people about your faith, you look for opportunity. Mm. And it's like maybe you finally have opened up a real conversation. It's like, oh, this is my time to jump in and tell Caleb about Christianity, you know, because I need to get him saved.
Yeah, that's not the space that you're wanting to create.
No. and one, I can't save you, right? That's the work of the Holy Spirit. So I can play my part in that, but ultimately that's the work of the Holy Spirit. But two, making an offer legitimizes the other person. And that's whether it's faith or whether it's space, you know, like oh, Caleb, I've seen that you've been down a bit. Do you want to talk about that?
Right.
You know, a simple offer, I actually don't think that harsh,
right?
You know, or that jarring where it's like, all right, we're going to come in and talk about what's going on. It's like, I've legitimized you as a person. I've seen you as God sees you, and like giving you the opportunity to say whether or not you're ready to talk about this or not.
Yeah.
And then we can go on from here, you know?
Yeah.
And you can say no, and it's like, that's completely fine.
Yeah.
As a friend, as a mate, I've made an offer. You've made a choice with that offer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to respect it either way, you know? Like,
yeah. I think that's 100% correct, is just being able to create those spaces. And you have plenty of opportunity to do it. And I think the thing behind it is that intentionality.
oh,
So
100%.
it's like, it's very different to like a how you're going while you're looking at your phone and on the way out.
Yeah.
Is a like, it's almost like a slowing down of the time of your body language and just being present in the moment and saying through what you're asking and how you're portraying yourself, you're saying, I'm invested in, if you're wanting to share, I've got the time for you.
Yeah.
And I genuinely want to hear. And like you said, if they say no, then it's like, okay, great. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if your body language and the way you're portraying yourself is, I'm in a hurry, I'm going on to the next thing.
Oh, 100%.
No one is going to open up in that space.
And it's going to feel illegitimate too, right? Like,
yeah.
Me and my wife have talked about this quite regularly with certain friends and going, oh, what should we do in this situation? And it's like, hey, I see you. And I want you to know, like, I'm always here to talk with you. And I just want to put that out to you right now, that if you want to chat, you can. But if you want to do that later, I'm here for you, you know?
Right.
And it validates them that not only are they seeing that you've seen more than just whatever's going on, you know, you're actually seeing them as who they are, but you're offering that. And that needs to be, if you're going to do that, it needs to be a real offer.
Yeah.
You can't tell someone, oh, I'm here for you. Like, if you need to call, like, just call me. Like,
yeah.
So.
And I think that caveated with putting in healthy boundaries for yourself. So if you're opening up your time and your availability to people, I think creating clear boundaries and communicating that with clarity shows love as well. Saying, hey, I'm available, like, for you. I want to hear about you, but like between 6 and 8,
that's family time.
That's family time. But I think that comes from relationship. Like,
but I think that's even part of making a good offer, right?
Yeah.
Like, making good offers and requests, whether they're about faith or anything, you know, leads to less frustration.
Yeah.
So you saying, hey, I'm here for you. I'd love to chat. If you want to, just call me after 8:00, you know?
Yeah.
That's a very clear offer. But that would be the same as, like, if you wanted me to do something for you for your job, you know? It's like, if you came up to me and was like, hey, Jeremy, can you get this thing done? And I'm like, yep. But I don't know your deadline. Exactly. And then you get close to your deadline and you're like, Jeremy hasn't done that for me. But you've made a terrible offer, you know? Like,
or like, I've had it where people have been like, literally call me anytime. And I know the intention of the heart is there. So that's the thing, is the intention's there, but then action, you call and it's like, actually, I'm busy now.
Yeah.
Like, can you call back in this time? And that's a missed opportunity. It's a missed 100%. Moment. Whereas if you like are stewarding your time and you put in healthy boundaries, which may come across as like harsh or off-putting, like people may perceive it like that, but in reality, what people hear and are communicated to is like, you value my time so much that you're saying you're carving out time in your own schedule.
Yeah.
And I know that if I call, then you've said that you'll be available then.
Yeah.
And it's that recognition. We're not God. We can't be everything all at once. We trust that God will be that for you.
Yeah, yeah. You can't do everything for everyone either. So I think making offers could drastically change some people's way they go about sharing their faith and reaching out to people. But I think, like you said, having those healthy boundaries, or even what I would just say is making good offers, you know, like solid thought through offers, rather than just I'm always here for you.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
I'm so guilty of that as well. Like, and that's why I know my intention is.
I was
like,
gonna say something to you right now. the whole podcast is leading to me.
Yeah,
No,
this
I'm
is
joking.
a rebuke. I receive it.
I'm joking.
But like, I think that's it. I've learned from my mistakes is that it's unhelpful for the person that you're trying to be helpful to, and no one benefits in the end.
No one benefits.
But yeah, I love that. I love the way this conversation's gone as well. I did not anticipate it to go yet, but I think, yeah, super, super helpful.
Yeah. Sometimes it just swirls around and goes here and then comes over here.
Exactly, yeah. No, I, as always, loved having a chat with you, Jeremy.
I'm excited for when I'll be back next.
Looking forward to it. And yeah, if you're listening and you haven't subscribed to our YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, please do so you don't miss out on any of these conversations or the guests we have on the show.
And if you want more of Jeremy, just let Caleb know.
Exactly. And yeah, please also leave us a rating and review. That really helps with the algorithms and helping more people engage with what we find helpful conversations to have.
Yeah. Awesome.
Chat soon.